Hello, everybody. This is Florence Christophers, the Kick Sugar Coach, and I'm here today with Sandra Elia, who is a recovered sugar addict, food addict, and she's here to share her story with us today. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Why don't you start with what it was like for you as a sugar addict or food addict?
Sure. I guess I have to start by turning back the clock a good 15 years ago. And I'm going to take you to when I was 29 years old. And that's definitely the year that I hit absolute rock bottom in my life. I had the prior year, I had gone on a diet. So I had lost 50 pounds in 6 months, and it was a very restrictive diet. And what I didn't know at the time, now that I've had a lot of years and experience and wisdom, was I created an artificial famine. That's what I call diets, an artificial famine. And my brain, whose job it is to keep me alive and survive, didn't know that, I'm in the 21st century living in Toronto. There is no famine. And so my brain went into high gear. And it started looking for food, seeking food, trying to ingest high calorie dense food as much as I possibly could to overcome this artificial famine that I had created through this restrictive diet. And so I lost the 50 pounds, and then I spent the next 12 months not gaining the 50 back, but doubling it, which a lot of people, my story is not unique in that sense. And so I gained 100 pounds in 1 year. And, I was working at a very prestigious firm, and to, show up every month at work heavier and heavier and heavier. And it was just so embarrassing for me. And it was just, I just wanted to hide, and I wanted to just disappear into the background. It was just so awful for me. And that year of gaining that much weight, I lived with, though I was, still in my 20s, I had chronic back pain. Getting in and out of the car was too much for me. Carrying the groceries out of the car was too much for me. Things like my thighs would rub red raw. I remember at the time I was working in the financial district, and we had this great underground system, but it got really hot down there. And of course, lunchtime was binge time for me. And off I would go into the underground, further away from my building, until I had to make my way back. And my thighs would be red and raw from rubbing. And I could feel the stretch marks coming in across my belly because, 100 pounds in 1 year, until I finally hit my rock bottom. So I was off work. I was depressed. What they would probably call clinically depressed. And so I was going to the doctor on trying to get the right cocktail of antidepressants and mood stabilizers. And I just remember, trying one drug for 6 weeks, trying the next drug, and nothing was working. But I knew that food had become my master, 100%. I lived for food. When was I going to get it? Where was I going to get it? How much was I going to get it? And I wanted to isolate, and I wanted to be alone. And this food that I thought was giving me so much comfort was killing me. It was killing me on every single front, whether it was killing me physically, it was killing me spiritually and emotionally. At 29, I look back now in my 40s, I was ready to check out. I just wanted to die. And I thought, what a waste. At 29 years old, I had decided life, I couldn't master it. Food was my master, and it was killing me. And I know at that time, it's so interesting. If you want to know why you abuse food, stop abusing food. And the reason will bubble up to the surface very, very quickly. And for me, it was fear. Because I remember when I first started getting into recovery, I started experiencing for the first time in my life fear that felt paralyzing. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know if you can see my screen. Hopefully not. Fear that was absolutely paralyzing. And I didn't know how to deal with that. So luckily, I found my way into a 12-step program at that time, and helped me with a lot of those different issues. But for me, I used to it was like being on a treadmill of hell. It really was. Like every Monday morning I thought would be different. I thought I would wake up on Monday morning, and I would exercise, and I would eat right, and I would lose a pound a day. Like a pound, not even physiologically possible to lose a pound a day, but that was my measure of success. So if that's your measure of success, talk about setting yourself up to fail and be a total and complete failure. So it was a very, very dark time in my life. And the bigger I became, the less I thought I was worth. And the hardest part for me really was the mental environment that I had created for myself. It was so incredibly punishing. Like if you sat in my head for a day, you would just be like, oh, but that is one toxic place to be, because I was just so punishing and I was so judgmental and I was so disgusted with me, only me. And it was interesting because life mirrored that back to me everywhere I went, in every circumstance, in every friendship, in every opportunity. It seemed to always come up against me because it's what I felt for myself was projected back onto myself. So I look back at that time, I can't even fully even remember how much pain that I was in. And I know that I was in the worst pain in my life, but yet I was walking through the days completely numb because of the amount of food that I was ingesting. It's like a lifetime away. It seems almost like a different person now. I'm so grateful to be able to say that.
Wow. So what was the transformation? So you're 29, you've hit rock bottom. Did you lose your job? You said you were unemployed?
No, I didn't lose my job, but I was on sick leave for 3 months. And it was interesting because when I went back to work, I thought, what are people going to think of me? And I had already started losing some weight, but I thought, what, are they going to even believe that I had this breakdown? Are they going to think I just wanted 3 months off? And I remember sitting in my boss's office and she reached over her hand and she said, Sandra, we knew you were sick. We saw it month after month. And it's so funny when you're that person, you think, no one knows I've gained 100 pounds. Like I'm wearing black and I'm wearing baggy clothes and no one knows I'm in pain. Like I've got it together. And this is my little secret. It wasn't my little secret. Everybody knew Sandra was getting sicker and sicker by the month. And then when I finally went on sick leave, it didn't really surprise anybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like you had a good support, some supportive people around you that wanted you to get better, could see that you needed help and were happy that you were getting it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what shifted for you? How did you start to claw your way out of the food and into recovery and freedom?
So there were a couple of things. The first thing I did, and I often, because I work with food addicts now, I'm a food addiction counselor, but the first thing that I did was I stopped trusting my thinking when it came to food. I knew that my thinking was always going to steer me down a wrong path. And so I needed to find people, professionals, people, support network that had what I wanted, and I had to do exactly as I was told. So there was no more negotiating, but I'm special, I'm unique, I'll do it my way, I'll figure it out. I hadn't figured it out. My best thinking got me to 260 pounds. My best thinking got me off work. My best thinking had me in this horrible codependent relationship with my mother, who was suffering from bipolar disorder and an eating addiction herself. My best thinking had me in a bad marriage. So I decided, and that's hard for people to hear at first, don't trust your thinking, but just take a look at your life. And if your life, like mine was, in complete and utter shambles, spiraling out of control, I had no business trusting my thinking anymore. And it's not forever. Today, I trust my thinking. I have a good intuition. I still have a support network. I still have mentors that I check with, that I trust. So that was the first thing. I found people that had what I wanted, and I started to do not what they told me, but exactly what they told me. I didn't waver. I was like, if you tell me to pluck like a chicken down the road, show me the costume, because I'm that desperate. Because it had come to a point where I was either going to die this way and death was coming quick, or I would just try to do it differently. And I wanted to try to do it differently. The other thing I did was I smashed the scale. I really did. I mean, at 260 pounds, I sometimes weighed myself 3 times a day. I have no idea why. I don't know what I expected to happen from breakfast to dinner, but I was compulsively on that scale. And it was always eating to appease the scale. Like, how much can I eat and not gain weight? How much can I eat and still lose weight? And it had so much power on me. Like, I would get on the scale in the morning and it would tell me, am I going to have a good day? Am I going to have a bad day? Am I a good person? Am I a bad person? And if I lost weight, I was like, yay, I can eat. And if I gained weight, it'd be like, screw it, I can eat. So every road led to eating. So I was like, no more. It's none of my business what I weigh. It is absolutely none of my business what I weigh. And I have to eat to be sane, because this food, this highly processed food, is skewing my perception. It's making me depressed. It's killing me. So whether I lose another pound or not, I'm never going to weigh myself again. And so when I go to the doctor for my physical, I turn around. I don't need to know the number, because the truth is, if I'm eating whole fresh foods, I'm abstaining from flour and sugar, and I move my body, my weight's going to end up where it ends up. Like, there's nothing I can do. And in a sense, I am almost powerless over it, because in my addictive mind, I want to be a certain number. And I did get close to that number once, and it didn't make me happy. It still wanted more. So those two things, not trusting my thinking, getting rid of the scale, and of course the third and most important thing, I think, is eliminating my drugs. And that is always the softer, easier way with any person who has a drug addiction. It's easier not to have it at all than to try to negotiate how much, when, start, stop. That to me is hell. That is what I call the addiction loop. The addiction loop I was stuck in for not years, but decades was, I'll have a bite. I'll just have a bite. It'll be different. This time it's okay. I'll have a sliver. It's my birthday. And then I would have that little bite. And then my brain would set up the phenomenon of craving, right? Because as soon as I ingest sugar and flour, I got a dopamine hit. I've got all kinds of chemical neurons going on in my brain. And then I think, oh, well, I've blown it now. I've totally blown it. So I might as well eat all of it, because guess what? The diet's going to start tomorrow. And if the diet starts tomorrow, that means I'm never going to eat these foods again in the rest of my life. So I'm going to eat everything today because the diet will start tomorrow. And that lie kept me stuck for years and years and years. And so, and also I would say spirituality for sure. Because in the beginning, when I couldn't trust my thinking, I had to find something else to trust. And for me, that was God. And so I became dependent on a power greater than myself that I call God. And my favorite prayer that has gotten me out of so many binds is, I'm not going to eat. Now, God, you take care of the rest. Because for me, that's my job, right? Like, my job is to make sure I don't put something in my mouth and eat. But then the rest, being carried, the fear, how am I going to handle this situation, that I put onto God, and it never failed me. So yeah, so quite a few different things I think were the turning point for me.
Fantastic. And so what's your life like now on the other side of, and so was it did it take a while for you to phase out the sugar and the flour, or was that you found a program and you started to weigh and measure and that was that, or?
So no, it definitely took some time. So when I started on my journey, 14 years ago, the idea of food addiction wasn't as well known or accepted as it is today. And so back then, I think I just had a trigger food list. So it was anything deep fried, anything that looked like a dessert. So it was very simple. And I only ate 3 times a day on 3 plates. So I didn't weigh and measure, fit on a plate. And that was very helpful for me, because I was going 100 miles an hour with my food addiction and my binge eating. So for me to be able to just have 3 plates of food, even if they were heaped up, was like huge. It was huge. For me to have dinner and not eat again till breakfast was a miracle. So I didn't weigh and measure my meals back then. Doing that, the first year I lost about 75 pounds. And then the next year I went on to lose another 25 or so pounds just by doing that. So early on in my recovery, I still had things like Diet Coke. I still had bread. But food addiction is very much a disease, and diseases progress. And mine certainly progressed through the years. And today, Diet Coke is not an option for me. Bread is not an option for me. And so it does change and morph. I think that people who dive in head first, knowing what we know today about processed foods and knowing what we know about the food industry, if you can cut it out completely, your recovery will be much easier. Because when I think back, I did a lot of white knuckling, and I had no idea. I didn't know that because I had a grilled chicken sandwich at lunch with a salad, which seemed very healthy, right? Meant that dinner I would white knuckle, and I'd have to use a lot of tools in my toolkit to make it through to breakfast. And I don't want to live like that anymore. I actually want to live where I'm safe and neutral around food, where my meals sustain me till the next meal and the next morning. And I'm just like, it's easy sailing. So that's why when I work with food addicts and, they feel like, I can't do this. This is so hard. This is so restrictive. It's actually the easier way. It's where you're going to get to a place where you're just neutral. Like to be able to eat breakfast and not feel pang of hunger till 12 or 1. Like it's like a whole new world. It's really lovely. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Great. So, wow. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much, wow, that was very succinct.
Yeah. Well, you wanted to know what life was like now.
Tell me.
I don't think I answered that. So what life is like now. What I decided to do was take what I thought was the worst curse of my life, right? Because all through my 20s, I just wanted to be thin. And the truth is, if I could be a thin, binging bitch, I would be. Like, honestly, like it would have been fine, because it takes a lot of work to be in recovery. And I always say, like, I get to exercise regularly and I actually love it. It's my new mood stabilizer and antidepressant. I don't need any drugs. I need to exercise. I get to meditate, which grounds me, which helps me vibrate love. I get to do service and work with other people. All this I would not do if I had never become a food addict. If I had never weighed 260 pounds, I would not do what I do every day. But what I do every day draws me immense joy and happiness. So I've taken what I thought was a curse and made the greatest blessing of my entire life. I'm actually grateful for it. I feel like my eyes are open. I feel like I'm not a victim to the food industry. I understand that they create a highly addictive product that makes me sick, and that they have an invested interest in me being obese, right? And I'm empowered now, and I can see that. And I'm empowered to know that every time I help another food addict, I'm only protecting and safeguarding my own food addiction, and it brings me immense joy. So for me today, life is amazing. I left that firm that I was working for, and I took another course. And as soon as I decided to start working with food addicts only, my whole career opened up and exploded, and doors have opened and opportunities have come, and the right people and mentors have been drawn to me. And so I know I'm on the right path, and it's amazing because I know people search for their life's mission, or their life or meaning to their life's purpose. Thank you. Finally came out, but you know what I was saying. My life's purpose, and I have found it. And not only have I found it, but the universe is responding and giving me opportunities to affirm that I'm on the right path. So that's what life is like today. I really changed the mental tapes in my mind, and I decided that my life was filled with blessings and miracles. And if I wake up every day looking for those blessings and miracles, I find them. I find them every single day.
I love it. There's a book, and I think it's called Ask Better Questions. I think that's what it's called. Don't quote me, but it's just this short little tiny book that talks about how our brains are designed to find evidence for what we think. So
I know. So when I coach people, I tell them all the time, when you're sitting in front of a menu, what I ask myself, especially when I'm a little bit stressed, like it's hard for food addicts when we don't have control over our food. So I'm looking at a menu, and the question, because my brain is like Google search, right? It's the same. So if I type in, there's nothing here for me to eat, it says, you're right. There's nothing here for you to eat. You might as well have the pizza. But if I type in, what is abstinent food? What is recovery food? All of a sudden, it's like those lines on the menu light up and they come towards me. And suddenly I'm putting a meal together that I didn't see before, but that is possible. And so it's all about how you approach it, right? And so, if I think about recovery, I have to give up. No. I don't have to give up anything. Actually, look at everything I get because of the way I live, right? So it's asking the right questions. Like your mind beats Google any day.
Absolutely. Awesome. Tell me a little bit about how you handle tricky social situations.
Yeah. So a couple of different ways. So one tricky one for me is, I have a lot of business dinners, and sometimes they happen later on. So, if the reservation's 8:00, I might not be eating till 9. I've learned 8:00 doesn't mean you start eating at 8:00. That means someone's going to be 15 minutes late, and then the ordering, and then people want, and I'm not going to eat till 9. So what I learned to do is to have a substantial snack at what would be dinner time. So like 5:30. I'll sit down with some raw vegetables. Usually this is my go-to, like some raw vegetables and a little bit of hummus, or even better than hummus would be some sort of fat. So whether it's like an olive oil dressing or something. And I find that I have that half a head of broccoli, some olive oil, and then I kind of tell my brain, you're fine. You're fine. You've already kind of had dinner. You're going to be totally fine. And it actually works, telling my brain that I had dinner. And so by the time everybody's ready, the dinner comes at 9. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't have dinner. And I totally forgot I didn't have dinner. So that's a really important thing, like to know what, when you're not going to have control over your meal, to plan ahead. The other thing, another tricky one for me, is travel. And again, I don't have control. I'm going to be on planes and things like that. So I try to pack as much food as I can. Tins of tuna. I also, bring a can opener, tins of chickpeas, things like that travel really well. But then I find out where the closest grocery store is. Most hotels will give you a mini bar fridge. And then you can also request a microwave. That's not a big deal. And I'll go to the grocery store and I'll get the pre-made salads and, and I just put together 1 or 2 meals so that I know if I'm really in a bind, for sure I'll have breakfast in my room, steel cut oats, berries, yogurt, and try to supplement as best as I can there. Sometimes, and I think just recently my father's been in the hospital quite a bit. He's very ill. Sometimes it's as simple as going to the food court at the hospital and saying, I'm going to have a meal that has no flour or sugar. Period. Just, it doesn't have flour and sugar. Just figure it out. So I might not be able to get as many vegetables as I should on my plan, but I'm careful with myself. I don't punish myself for that. I just figure out what's the best that I can do, but I'm not touching my drugs no matter what. So yeah, I think it's a lot about pre-planning, having flexibility, a lot of prayer, a lot of faith, asking Google the right questions.
Awesome. And I love to hear that flexibility. I know that one of the things that was tricky for me in my program was it was 3 a day and there was no eating at 9. It was a break and I had to start at day 1 again, right? Which was demoralizing. So I kind of figured out for me that flexibility and trusting the decisions I make when I'm needing to be flexible made all the difference in the world. So it sounds like you've got
that's because you know what it is, just like yourself, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going to do this one day at a time for the rest of my life. That's the other thing. People early on recovery get very anxious about, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And I say, you're right. Like whatever you think, you're right. If you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right. And I don't know either if I can do this for the rest of my life. I don't, honestly. So to quell my own anxiety about this, I talk about one meal. So I've had lunch and it was abstinent and peaceful. I am fairly confident that dinner will be fine too. But that's as far as I go. I can't even talk about tomorrow because as soon as I start talking in terms of the rest of my life and never again, my little addict voice turns on and goes, really? Really? You're going to do this? This is not sustainable. And so to quell that voice, I say, you know what? You're right. All I'm going to think about is dinner. And dinner I can manage. And then I'll start again tomorrow morning. And the truth is, that's all we have. Each one of us only has this moment in front of us. It's almost the great equalizer, whether you're rich, poor, educated, uneducated, heavy, thin, we all just have this one moment ahead of us to deal with and to live to the best of our ability.
Beautiful. So true. Awesome. Would you like to share any final words of wisdom with those who are still out there trying to find their path to freedom?
For sure. You know what it is? It's love. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but love does heal all things. And at 260 pounds, I really needed to love myself. The lumps, the bumps, the sagging skin, all of it. I had to love every single part of me because love is energizing. There are 2 kinds of thoughts. There's thoughts that will energize you and there are thoughts that will drain you. And when I had those thoughts of disgust and self-hatred and judgment, it drained me. There was no wonder I couldn't get off the couch and I wasn't motivated. But when I chose the path of love, where I unconditionally accepted myself exactly as I was that day, I could breathe, I could get up, I could move, I could heal myself. My body is a living organism, and if I pour love on it, it will flourish. And if I pour hatred on it, like any other living organism, it will slowly die. So remembering that it all starts with unconditional love, unconditional, right? That's the key. It's not when I lose 20 pounds, not when I eat right, not any of those times. Unconditional starts in this moment, exactly as I am. And even the word unconditional makes me zone in on the parts that I put the most conditions on, the parts that bothered me the most, which was my tummy and my butt. And those were the parts where I poured all the love on, because there's other parts, we all have parts of ourselves that are easy to love, but they already get enough love. I had to go to the parts that got no love. That's where I poured it all on. So understand that love heals all things. It's not a cliche. It's not a saying. It is something that you actively do. It's a verb. It's an action. And until you walk that path, will you fully understand that it is a universal truth.
Beautiful. So for you, when you started to move away from the self-hatred and the negative thinking, you started with just loving body parts?
Yeah, I mean, it really did, because that's where I started, from the outside in, where normally it should probably be the other way around, but there was just so much loathing going out from the outside. So once I could get comfortable with the outside of me, it was a lot easier to love my spirit. See, for me, my spirit, that's my divine spark. That's the perfect part of me. That's the part that longs for nothing. That's the part that has no resentments. It's that perfect peace. So once I got into my spirit, that place was easy to love unconditionally. It was the outer part that took me a lot longer, and I started there.
And if you were to get a little bit practical with that, like what sort of advice would you give people who are interested in starting there? What would you say?
Yeah, so I often tell my clients to do mirror work. And so we're all naked at some point in the day. You're going to be naked. And I want you in that point in the day, so it's not like you got to find some extra time. You're naked. You stand in front of a mirror and you say loving, adoring, beautiful things to each and every part of your body. And just let it soak in. And when you start changing the way you look at things, things start to change, to quote Wayne Dyer. And so when I started looking at my body as a beautiful creation, it started to change, and it started to become what I saw. And because, as I mentioned, love is energizing, and you need a ton of energy to do what we need to do to be well. And that's not always. It's just that ramp up stage, right? Like, I don't want to scare anyone, because once you get into it, there's this tipping point where exercise is needed. It's not a chore. It's like, I got to exercise. That's my antidepressant. Or meditation is a must. Like, I need it to thrive, just like I need water to thrive.
Right, because they become pleasures, don't they?
Mm-hmm,
and
yeah,
they replace the pleasures that sugar used to be, and we discover there's other ways of hitting the bliss point.
Exactly. Yeah. Except the food industry doesn't like it because they don't get a share of that. How can they charge you for that?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing. I think that's amazing. I've never heard of a sugar coach. I think that's a fantastic concept, and it's needed. It's very much needed. I worry, especially for our children who are growing up today in such a toxic food supply. When I was growing up, it was bad, but whoa, we're on steroids now. So we need you, and we need your work. So thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.